Do you love playing TTRPGs that are focused on your personal stories of the characters, the struggle that each of your characters have within the game? And do you want to play a monster? Someone who is either dealing with the fact that they've been newly turned into a creature that needs to survive by feeding off of humans, or do you love the drama of political intrigue where it's different factions and clans fighting against each other and you have to pick sides? Well, you might like the game that we are talking about today on the RPG Goblin as I bring on Kat and we talk about Vampire the Masquerade, which is the game that fits all of that criteria and more. A super, super flexible system that is focused on playing these personal stories of struggle and monsters and political intrigue and drama, and it's gothic and just gorgeous. If any of this sounds like something you would be interested in with a TTRPG, please, please, please listen to this episode of the RPG Goblin. So, let's not wait any further. Let's get into it. Welcome to today's episode of the RPG Goblin. I am, of course, your host, Willow, and today we are going to be talking about Vampire the Masquerade, which is a game I've actually had on my shelf for a while, but I haven't quite looked into it all too much yet. So, what we're going to do is I am bringing on Kat, and we are going to be talking about Vampire the Masquerade, and it's going to be amazing. So, to get started, Kat, would you please introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Kat, and I make dice. I mean, I do other things too, but I make dice. My handles are usually Copper Dice. That's KHOPPER.DICE. With or without the dot, sometimes depends on what social media I'm on. But yeah, I specialize mostly in gothic, very moody dice. So Vampire the Masquerade was right up my alley.
Oh, absolutely. And your dice are so good. Your dice are so fantastic. It's always a joy to see them when they come up on the feed. It's like, oh, they're so pretty. But yeah, actually what got me to reach out to you was the fact that you've actually made some Vampire the Masquerade dice, and they are stunning, by the way, just absolutely stunning. And so I'm like, ooh, maybe it would be really awesome if I could get her to come on and talk about Vampire the Masquerade. And here we are. So
Yeah. I'm obsessed with the look of those dice, and I remember that was the thing that I was like, what are these? I need to find the game that's associated with this, and that was kind of my entry.
I mean, the dice pull you in, and then everything else follows. It's the natural order of things.
It's so true. Yeah.
But yeah, so I think we will get started, and I think the first question, for obviously everyone who is listening to this episode, and you might be asking, what is Vampire the Masquerade?
I think the best way that I can describe Vampire the Masquerade is it is a sort of like your other tabletop RPGs, right? It's a collaborative storytelling game. But this one kind of functions a little bit differently than, say, D&D 5e. This is very much a personal horror game. So if you're looking for something that has a bit of edge, a bit of spice, this is a really good game to kind of delve into those darker concepts, more political intrigue. It's definitely less of a hack and slash, more of, there is still that, but it's not the main focus. It's definitely a role-play focused game. So if you're not really into role-playing, it may not be the best option for you. But if you're like me, where I can do role-play sessions over and over and not really have a huge combat encounter, then you'll probably really like this game.
Absolutely. And so I think even with the way that they put the language for Vampire the Masquerade with the GM being called the storyteller instead, I think that already sets the stage of this being incredibly narrative heavy, which is so cool. So with Vampire the Masquerade, you've had some personal experience playing this game so far. What has your experience been? So have you played? Have you actually ran the game?
So I have played for, I would say, like a few years, but I've known about the game for longer.
Mhm.
It is primarily like, okay, so I have all of the books because I'm that person where if I'm like a chronic collector. So if I start something, I have to finish it.
Of course.
And I fell in love with the game so much because like I just have like I have a very strong like vampire loving background. I used to do like Halloween haunts. I got to be vampire. It was like the highlight of that weird career that I had.
It's
And
amazing.
vampire gothic stuff is just kind of like my jam, and
Mhm.
it's becoming more and more part of my brand. So I fell in love with it really for a really long time, but I never knew how to play it. And then eventually, I had a really good friend who taught me how to play, and I haven't been able to be a storyteller yet because there's so I'm like so nervous to like tell my own story at my
Mhm.
D&D table. I have had the same crew for like I think going on like 5 years or something, 5 or 6 years, and everybody at that table has done some sort of storytelling DM stuff except for me
Mhm.
because I'm so afraid of like I don't know. I'm definitely more of like a writer and less of an improv person.
Mhm.
But I say that, but I'm actually I'm quite good at improv. I just don't think that I am. You know, those insecurities and stuff. I want to make sure that I do this
It's
right
spring.
because I have such a I care so much that I don't want to mess it up. And so I overthink it. So I
Absolutely.
haven't done it, but I probably will be doing a one shot just to get over that initial like barrier, you
Mhm.
know, with my friend who taught me how to play because that's going to be the easiest way to do it because because the game is so lore heavy, you don't have to okay, so like one of the things I really like about the game is that you can pick and choose whatever you want, but you don't have to use really anything. If you don't
Mhm.
want to have stuff in your game that's featured in here, you make the rules. You get to decide however you want to do it. It's your playground. So like I know that I could just do it now,
Mhm.
but it's so close to my heart that I want to get it right.
Of course. And I think like the bringing up the lore, I would love to touch on that a bit more. But I think first I would like to ask for anyone out there because there's always specific stories that people want to tell.
Yes.
And different role-playing games help tell those stories even better. So if you want to tell a hero fantasy, high fantasy game, you can use D&D. If you want to tell a story about superheroes, you can use a game about superheroes. For Vampire the Masquerade, what stories is it best at telling?
I would say it's best at telling like those personal stories. You
Mhm.
can do like a big grand. If you're going to do something big and grand, I would maybe say like a political intrigue would be a really good way to explain like the type of game that I would like to play in that like I see you can, you know, uh subterfuge your way into the court, like right, like your
Mhm.
vampire court. We call them kindred, but like I'm not going to get into too much of the lore and stuff right now. But like you can like sneak your way into the court, and if you want to climb the ranks, you can climb the ranks and dismantle it from the top or something, right? You can unveil uh cults, or you can unveil, and I'm not talking like big D&D cults, right? I'm talking like, well, I mean, there's a like a side note for everything, right? But like you like, find out, I mean, these when you're working with vampires and stuff, they've been around for forever, right?
Mhm.
So you can unveil secrets, and um it's that kind of game. At least that's been my experience, and that's what I really enjoy about it. And then you
Mhm.
can also just explore those personal horror elements, which I do love a grand giant story, but I think I like those small, intimate, personal things a little bit more because like at the end of the
Absolutely.
day, you are playing a monster.
Mhm.
You are a monster, and a huge factor of the game is retaining that humanity to connect you to who maybe you were or who you would like to be.
Mhm.
But there is, at the core of it, you're the bad guy. You are
Absolutely.
preying upon humans in order to continue to survive. So it is kind of like having to figure out that balance of trying not to tip over the edge when everyone around you maybe has already done that or is embracing it or trying to get you to do that and thinking that you're lesser because you're not. It's hard.
Ooh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Oh, yes, those. I mean, I'm definitely one for like player focused stories where it gets into, their personal struggles and everything. So this is just hitting me right, like it's hitting every
Yeah.
box.
They really like integrate that into the game because like one of the things that you have to have are like convictions and touchstones. And these are things that you choose early on in character creation that are basically like, these are my core values. And if you do anything against those core values, you'll be assessed by your storyteller. Will basically kind of go like, okay, well, you had said that you would never kill the innocent. You would only kill
Mhm.
those who deserved it, who were hurting other people. But you willingly did this to this person who was innocent. So let's check your humanity and see if you fall closer into the monster or not.
Oh
And you
man,
can
that's
maybe plead your
amazing.
case too.
Uh-huh.
Right. And it's kind of cool. And your touchstones are people who you associate with those core values. And it could be somebody that
Mhm.
you knew. They all have to be alive. But it also could be somebody that, oh, there is this really sweet little old lady who has a lot of cats and she lives downstairs in apartment 2B. And she is my touchstone for this particular core value, which is, taking in the less fortunate or something. You have someone to link to it. It's cool.
Oh, that is amazing. That is so amazing. Oh, and I think this actually leads perfectly into let's talk about character creation because, with it being, pretty focused on like those personal stories and those personal struggles, character creation should, and it seems like it does, support this idea. So, what are the steps of creating a character in Vampire the Masquerade that helps you be able to roleplay that character out in a very meaningful way?
So I think like when I first was like learning how to play the game, I think that was like the hardest thing for me to figure out was how to create a character. I mean, they
Mhm.
do have it in like your inside of the book, right? But it is kind of sandwiched between a whole bunch of stuff. Like there is so much lore. Um so I think they recently, like I think like last week, just came out with a player's guide for the first time that I am actually
Oh,
after this going to be contacting my local game store to see if they have it. So I want to pick it up today. But I'm so happy that they finally made like a legit just player's guide because the
Mhm.
the core rule book is kind of for DMs or storytellers and for the players, right?
Mhm.
But inside you'll find the character creation like summary. And basically like your concept in this is it's I think I've spent more creating a character for Vampire the Masquerade than I have for any other character. And it's not because of what I have to choose like stats wise, right?
Mhm.
Because they actually make it really easy. They kind of have a formula. You don't have to worry about like you don't have to overthink everything. You have your formula and that is like you have you have attributes and you have skills and your attributes are going to be like your strength, your things like that, like your main kind of general stats, but then you have attributes which kind of feel like a bit of Pathfinder to me because it branches out into like, oh, you're good at firearms, you're good at technology, right? You
Mhm.
have more specifics that can help you figure out your character. And
Absolutely.
then in each of those little sections, you get to choose how good you are or how bad you are. And one of the things I also really like about the game is that it integrates weaknesses
Mhm.
because I think it's fun to fail personally. If I fail something,
Oh, yes.
I'm excited. It pushes the story
Yes.
forward. I think failing is amazing. Um,
One of my
so
favorite
like
things.
you have to choose things like what are your merits and then what are your flaws, and you have to have some. And there's a plethora for you to choose from. And it could be just like one of my favorite flaws is like, oh well, I can only drink blood from humans who are from this particular city.
Hmm.
who are on this particular substance that I liked as a human,
Hmm.
or I can't drink from um, women, or I refuse to drink from anybody under the age of 18. Things like that. There's definitely worse flaws than that, but it's things like that. That's the part that takes forever for me. And then also choosing my convictions and my touchstones, right? Because like these are the things that I'm going to be judged on. I need to make sure that I can fall in line with what these are.
Hmm. That's so, it's so interesting how
Yeah,
games set up
you
just
get. Oh, sorry.
no, all good. I just always find it fascinating to hear about games that actually set up elements of the characters that actually work for roleplay and support roleplay in that storytelling elements instead of
Yeah.
like, oh, you have an 18 in strength. You're really good at at swinging a
Yeah, like,
sword.
there's not really like those kinds of numbers in the game. It's more of like you fill in dots and those dots equal how many dice you can roll for this thing.
Yes, because Vampire's a dice pool game, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's a success or fail system dice pool game, and so it kind of encourages you to be creative because the more that you can utilize other things, the higher your pool is going to be, right? So if it's like, oh, I want to pickpocket this guy at the bar, and it's like, okay, well, you can use maybe dex and stealth or something, right? And it's like, okay, well, what if I want to flirt and I want to kind of like do the whole make them watch this hand while I use this other one to like
Mhm.
pickpocket. Okay, cool. So then maybe add some charisma to that. Let's maybe work in some manipulation or maybe some, like there are some other things that you can do and then you can add to your dice pool. So if you only had like 2 dice, well now I have like 4, so I have a higher chance of succeeding.
Absolutely. Okay.
And I
Ooh.
like that creativity. And I also forgot to mention one other thing for your question about like how like picking things for character creation that help you role play, help you find who your character is. You got to pick a predator type. And like what that is, it's like what your preferred method of hunting is. And there's stuff like Sandman is one where you get to go and you get to hunt people who are asleep. There's
Mhm.
one that's Alley Cat, and that's more of like the kind of like violent, I'm gonna ambush you and jump you. Um, that has a negative impact on your humanity, so you actually have to drop it. There are
Mhm.
some things, it's almost like a feat. You get some
Mhm.
cool things associated with it. It's like, oh, you now have access to this thing. But also, here's this negative thing that you have to deal with now.
Absolutely. So it makes that everyone who's playing in this game, because you're pretty much playing all vampires, and it could almost seem like that could be boring if not everyone's unique enough. But those like kind of I
Yeah,
guess types,
you
those
can.
predator types make it more interesting in that everyone kind of gets their own flavor and different abilities. I guess yeah, different like abilities
Yeah,
that
yeah,
they
yeah,
can do.
yeah. And like you can play as a human. You can play as a ghoul, which is sort of like a thrall, right? Like it's like a vampire's servant where you get special abilities. You can kind of play as whatever you want. Like one of the things that it's baked into the rules is very much like have fun.
Mhm.
If you want this to be a personal game, make it a personal game. If you want this to be an over arcing game of you get to control very like Warhammer. If you want to control a whole group of vampires and then your other person in your party, like across in the table, plays playing a different group of vampires, you can do something like that too. But the point is just to have fun.
Definitely. And I think with that as well is Vampire the Masquerade is also a fantastic game to use safety tools with because it can get very personal.
That's actually on the cover. It's like the mature content warning,
Hmm.
um, where they encourage you to talk to your players about their lines and their veils, right? Like what do you not want to do? What is something that is, if it comes up, you don't know what everybody has been through. And since this is sort of a game that delves into a lot of darker themes, like you need to make sure that everybody's comfortable. If one person doesn't want X, then you don't include that in your story. If one person is okay with X, but would like to not go into detail or would not like to linger too much on it or have it be the focus, then you don't do that either.
Mhm.
Like the last line of it is pretty much, this is a game about monsters, but it is only a game. Don't use it don't use it as an excuse to be a monster yourself. I just think that's kind of nice.
Yes, that's fantastic. And, it's always a game. It's you are there to have fun, not torture another person.
Yeah. Like, I mean, like, cause like at the end of the day, like, I don't know, I think it was Puffin Forest who was doing like a video about, I think it was like Pathfinder or something. I don't know if that's not the point, but the point was like at one point he had decided he wasn't having fun with the game that he was in. And it's like, this is my Saturday. I should be enjoying myself. And maybe you don't play on Saturdays or whatever, but like the point is still the same, right? If you're not having fun, why are you here? Like, this is something that takes hours out of your day. You should make sure that everybody's having fun and being comfortable. There's fun in being a little bit uncomfortable, right? It's like when you read a good book, you watch a show, there's fun in that, but you don't want anybody walking away hurt.
Exactly. And with other media, it's a lot easier to control your comfortable, like how comfortable you are, because you could just turn it off. You can stop reading the book. That's why in actual role-playing games, you have to be really good at communication and really clear about what the lines and veils are exactly. You don't want to make anyone feel bad.
Absolutely. And if like, I think it's a pretty telling sign that if you go into a VTM game or any game really, and you don't have your adjudicator, your storyteller, your GM, your DM, whatever, what have you, right? If they don't check in and like ask, like, hey, what are you uncomfortable with? What would you not like to have in this game? Or even just say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about including. Is this okay with you? If there's no check-in, that kind of worries me personally, right? Because like it's so important for me. I want to make sure that I don't say anything or I don't bring up anything in like my character backstory or ask for something that is going to make somebody uncomfortable, whether I'm the player or not.
Exactly. And that's where session 0/communication
So
is
important.
Of course. I mean, it's safety tool, like there's been several times where we've had safety tool rants on this podcast so far, just because it's so important. It really is when it comes to these games. And I don't think it can be said enough, because new people are always going to listen to a different episode. And so it's always good to inform.
So it's like, what if you may know what you're getting into at the table, but maybe there's somebody at your table who doesn't. It's always good to refresh too, not just to have the initial chat, but I think a good refresh is always helpful.
I completely agree with someone who has done these things personally with my own groups.
Good. Good.
Yeah, it's insanely beneficial. And I mean, in the games that I run, it's not as intense as Vampire the Masquerade can get, but there's times where you just need to be like, okay, let's do like a session 0.5 and just talk about where we are. What are we happy with? What needs to change? Where do we go? Even during sessions, I like to take a break and see how everyone's doing. And at the end, when we end our sessions, do it in a way that's like kind of aftercare, where we all talk about, different moments that each other did that was really great and that you really enjoyed, and like elements you want to see further. That then helps the GM or storyteller or anyone who's in that position know what to bring more to the table, which is always fun.
It's really sweet. I've never heard it put that way. Like our group does that, but we just kind of do it as just like, I guess it just happens, right? You just kind of have your after talk as you're hanging out. But like that is such a good way to put it. I like that a lot.
Yeah, and actually we use Stars and Wishes, which I don't know.
God,
Yeah,
that's so cute.
It's a great thing because basically, I mean, I don't know if this is the way that everyone does it, but at least for my group, everyone says a star for each person, which is like, here's a moment that I'm giving you a gold star for. This is something amazing that you did. And then the wish is, this is something that I would like to see happen. This is something I would like to see more of, and so forth. And each of us gets a turn. We all say it for each other, and then like it's such a fun time. Everyone's so excited for it each time we play because they get to hear something good that they did. They get to tell the other players what good they did, and even the GM as well. And so everyone just feels super great. And it's like, even though it's like kind of controlled, like here's kind of the quote unquote rules that we're doing for it, everyone's having a fantastic time. And it's always the best parts of the game after we're done. It's like, all right, let's do stars and wishes.
Love that. I love that so much. Do you mind if I borrow that?
Oh, absolutely. It's not
I love
mine.
that. I'm all for like encouraging like good like vibes.
Exactly. That's what it does. Is like if someone gives a star to someone about the role play that they did, that person's gonna keep that in mind as they go into further sessions. Like,
Absolutely. And I think it also helps encourage people who may be kind of shy about,
mhm,
role play is kind of hard if you don't have a background in it. Like I kind of fall into it because I've done like theater my whole life. Like
mhm,
it's very easy for me to kind of fall into that sort of thing. But I've had other people that I've played with who are more logic based, right? They want to do more of the number crunching. They're not super into the role play. And when
mhm,
they try to do it, they're just it kind of comes down to I'm kind of shy. I'm kind of nervous. Like I don't want to it's embarrassing.
mhm.
So I feel like that's a good way to encourage them that you did really great and you should feel that way.
Exactly. And I think that also that's a good point in general is, not every game is for everyone. There are
Yes,
people that really like role play, that thrive in narrative games. There are people that just love the tactical and number crunching aspects, and those are all valid.
absolutely. I'm definitely not a number crunchy person. It kind of takes me out of it. Like I said, like I could play sessions that are just role play focused and
Mhm.
that's it. That's all we do. I'm fine with that. But like when it gets to super heavy number crunching where you're kind of spending, a good like 10 minutes trying to figure out the outcome of a thing.
Mhm.
I don't know, man. That's just it's not my vibe.
Absolutely.
I like faster paced, faster decisions, but I have the attention span of a goldfish. So
That's so fair. But yeah, so going back into the game a little bit,
sorry. I'm like the
Oh
queen
no,
of sidetracking.
you are perfectly fine. So yeah, I mean, thinking about though the aspects of, number crunching and more so mechanics of the game. So, like we mentioned earlier, Vampire the Masquerade is a dice pool game. Would you mind explaining kind of a scenario how a situation would get resolved in Vampire the Masquerade using like the dice pool mechanic?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things that you have to keep in mind is it's a set of 20 dice, right?
Hmm.
15 are one color. Traditionally, they're black, and that kind of helps you figure out that's like your main like pool. And then you have 5 dice that are your hunger dice.
Hmm.
And every I was gonna say every morning. Every night you wake up and you have to roll what's called a hunger check. And that's just to get a kind of pulse on how hungry you are. You roll one die, it's one red die, and if you fail, you get hungrier. So now you have, let's say you have now you have 2. The only way to have no, you will always roll in your dice pool for whatever thing you have. You will always roll at least one hunger die unless you feed and take that person's life. That's the only way that you will never have a hunger die in your pool at all.
Hmm.
And that's a representation of what they call the beast. And in every kindred, there is a beast inside of them trying to get out, that's the monster that you're trying to not fall into, right?
Hmm.
So let's say you woke up, you already had one because that's just kind of how you start. And you roll your hunger die, and now you're hungrier, you failed. So now you have 2. Okay, well, later on in the night, you end up, maybe you need to, it's a good scenario. You go into like a scuffle, right?
Mhm.
So my character, she's very much, her name is Isabel Sinclair, and she's a big mafia babe vibes. So she loves her
I love it.
guns. She's very much in a in a coterie, which is like your little crew. It's your party. In your coterie, and my coterie of vampires, uh, they're all guys except for her, and she is the muscle, which I just love. I love it so much. So let's say there's a scuffle. She needs to shoot something. She can use her guns. And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, this didn't work. I'm going to run. I want to run straight to this person who is attacking my friend. And I want to barrel into them. And then I want to grapple them just to get them
Mhm.
off this person. I want to hold them back so that this person can interrogate them for questions. Okay, well, you need to roll let's call it maybe it's a strength and a brawl. And I'm like, okay, well, I have an expertise in grappling, so I get to add that. So I would take the dots that I have in strength, let's say it's 2, and then I have the dots that I have in brawl, and let's say that's also 2,
Mhm.
right? So that's 4 dice that I can roll so far, and because I'm good at grappling, um, I get to add an extra one for that. So that's 5 dice. But I am hunger times 2. So of those 5 dice, 2 of them have to be red.
Okay.
And so what that means is you can like critically fail, and to critically fail something. And again, maybe I don't want to like sound like I'm the expert in this, because there are people who know way more stuff than I do. So if I get something wrong and somebody is listening who is super, this is not correct, apologies. I'm still learning stuff as I go, even after years in. But you can
Everyone's
critically
always
fail
learning. It's
something,
great.
and that ends up being on your hunger die, you have a skull. And so that basically means that it's a bestial failure. And that when that happens, your beast has an influence on you. And it is the storyteller's job then to kind of describe what happens. The more hungrier you are, the more things trigger. So if I'm hunger level 4, um, just the sight of blood will set me off. And that can be really bad in a very restrained situation where you're trying to talk to somebody of
Mhm.
importance, right? So basically, yeah, you have your pool, you roll your dice, and then the storyteller will have in mind you need to have 2 successes
Mhm.
to succeed, right? And it's not going to be anything absurd where it's like you need 7 successes to do this thing, unless it's like an insane godlike thing. Because like I mean, you only have, keep in mind like your max dice that you'll be able to roll, to me so far have averaged about maybe like 3 is pretty average for me.
Mhm.
It can be 4 maybe. There are different things that you can do, like different little powers that can add things to your dice pool. But traditionally it's kind of like, okay, well maybe you only need like 1 success to pickpocket this guy. You only need 2 successes to make this jump, or to pull restrain this guy. And especially if it's a vampire versus a human, no contest. So it's really going to be when it's like supernatural versus supernatural.
Mhm. Absolutely.
So if you make those successes, you win. You get to do the thing. And if you fail, then the storyteller explains what happens. They're basically there to just adjudicate, right? And then also just be the voice of what your actions have on the world.
Mhm. Absolutely. For successes and failures, what because your dice in Vampire the Masquerade are 10-sided dice.
Yes.
What constitutes as a success? What constitutes as a failure when you're rolling the dice?
So I primarily use the dice with the symbols, right? Has like the onks. You can use just D10s. I'm less knowledgeable about how the rulings on the D10s go. I'm pretty sure that if it's If it's a 1, it's a critical failure. If it's a 0, it's a critical success. And then 1 through 5 is a fail, and then 6 through 10 is a success. But for me, the symbols are if you roll the die and you get a blank side, that's a fail. If you roll a die and you have an onk, that's a success. And then if you roll a die and you get an onk with, I think the traditional dice have fangs, mine have wings. So that's what I'm used to saying. You need 2 of those in order for it to count as like a critical success. So if you have 3 dice, you roll 3 dice, but only one of them is like the special onk, it doesn't count but for 1. But if you roll a 3 and you get 2 of those, then that's actually double. It doesn't count for 2, it counts for 4.
Oh, shoot.
So you can, because it's kind of harder to get those, right? And
Yeah.
the more you add to your dice pool, the likelihood that you're going to get it. There's not a critical fail on your standard dice, but on your hunger ones there are, and that's the red dice, and that'll be like the skull or a 1.
Interesting. And so, yeah, and so you just roll them, and then let's say the DC, the number that needs to be hit is 2. You need 2 successes. You roll your dice and you get 2 and you succeed. You roll your dice, you only get 1, you don't succeed. Is there any way after the fact that you've rolled the dice for you to try and get a success still?
Yes, there actually is. There's a couple different things that you can do. You can spend what's called a willpower point to re-roll some dice that are, you can't re-roll the hunger one. So if you have a dice pool that has some red dice in it, you can't re-roll those. Those are stuck. But you can re-roll the other one at the cost of a willpower point. And you only have so many of those based on your stats that you picked in the beginning. Because it's sort of like like in 5e, it's like, okay, in order to get your spell save DC, it's 8 plus your, all those, you have a formula. It's the same thing for Vampire Masquerade. It's whatever dots you have in this and whatever dots you have in this, that equals your willpower. So you have a certain amount of points that you can use to do things like re-roll. And then you can work with your storyteller. I believe that, and I could be a little bit wrong on exactly the wording on this, but you can do what's called succeeding at a cost, in which case you can ask your storyteller, or your storyteller can ask you, if you have at least 1 success, you can try to succeed at a cost. If this is something that you really, really needed to work, you can ask, can I succeed with a cost? And they will tell you what the cost is. And then it's up to you to decide if it's worth that value.
Ooh, I love that. I love that so much, because that just reminds me, because again, I love when things go bad in games. I love failure. I love when things go bad. Succeeding at a cost is some of the most interesting things, because yes, you do succeed, but things go really bad. Maybe someone sees you. Maybe, you get in trouble, stuff like that, which makes me just always giddy as someone to run a game. That always makes me giddy.
It adds to the drama.
Absolutely.
So there's a couple of different ways that you can try to win. But again, it really just depends on if it's worth it for you. Because if it's just some fun thing that you wanted to do really quick, maybe you don't want to use those willpower points for that. Maybe it's going to be better served when you actually, have a meeting with somebody of high importance that you're going to want to make sure you end up saying the right things.
Absolutely. For the willpower points, so obviously you have a set amount depending on your dots that you have. Is this like these are as many that you get for the entire time that you play, or are there ways to refresh them and get more?
I believe, and again, like this is, I don't really use my willpower points all that much. Mostly because honestly, I kind of forget that I have that ability. But you get them back sort of like at the end of like a long rest, or you get a certain amount back at the end of every night. There are some things that are restricted to like disciplines are kind of like I kind of equate them to like a school of magic. Every clan, that's sort of like your class. Every clan has access to certain what I like I said what I call like kind of schools of magic, and those things maybe you can only do for a scene, and that's kind of like the duration is like a scene.
Mhm.
So when you spend your willpower point, it's really only for like that time, right? But you can do other things that maybe will last you a little bit longer. You can do what's called like a
Absolutely.
blood surge, which
Ooh.
you can add an extra like I think it's a die or two to your pool. But again, it's going to kind of cost you. So there's like different things that you can do, but the willpower points come back at the end of your night, or at least a certain amount of them.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense with, just thinking of how mechanics work in a lot of other games. That would make sense that you would get them back after an arc of a story, after, a night. Like that makes sense. That makes
Yeah, it's very it's not like something you have to hoard. Um you can kind of use those. The
Mhm.
point is not to make your players fail continuously. Like you definitely want them to succeed in things. So it's not impossible to get those back. But again, also it might just depend on your storyteller. Maybe they want it to be sort of like a grittier campaign. So you maybe can't get them back after a night. Maybe it is something that you can only do for, a week or something in game time. It just really
Absolutely.
depends on how they want to play it. But traditionally, I believe it's at the end of a night or the
All
next
right.
day, right?
Oh,
Like
yeah,
end of
yeah,
the rest.
yeah. The day, which is, the night, but,
Yeah.
it's vampire, the day is the night, it's fine.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so you did mention, like, disciplines and clans, and I think this still, like, kind of ties in with, like, character creation. So you mentioned that clans are sort of like your class. Can you explain further on that?
Yeah, and this is just the way that it was easiest to for me to best translate it. Other people might have other opinions on what they would be equal to, but for my D&D background, clans, there's 13. They're good at different things, just how every like class in D&D is kind of different at or better at certain things, right? You have like your rogue is better at the stealth thing. You have your fighter who's good at the fighting. So your clans are going to kind of help drive your characters I don't want to say like personality because it's going to there's certain things where it's like, oh well, I am this clan, but I don't really act like it, or I
Mhm.
yeah. So like there's always going to be certain differences. But you can have the clan that I'm currently on, my what I would say would be my personal clan would be a Toreador. And they're very much they all have like nicknames. They're the divas, they're the artists. And they're traditionally really into they're kind of they can be gossipy. They're your high society. Their symbol is a rose, so you can kind of get the vibe, right? Very
Absolutely.
into beauty. But then you also have another clan that I really like, which are the Nosferatu.
Mhm.
And for them, they are usually like sewer dwellers. They don't go out, they can't really be seen. It's kind of like playing the game on hard mode.
Mhm.
Because you can't go out in public. You kind of have physical looks of like, your Nosferatu, like the old black and white movie, right? You're if you go out, people are gonna know that you're a monster because you look like one. You need to be subtle. It's called Vampire the Masquerade, and the masquerade is sort of the you don't let humans know.
Mhm.
That's the masquerade. So you can't break that. And there are sort of like two different clans or two different factions. One is very much like for this, and the other one is not as much. So your clans are kind of also separated into these factions. They can cross over, but for the most part, certain ones go to one side and others go to another. If you want to do something that's kind of like magic based, you can pick the Tremere clan. If you want to have a clan that's more like money, power, and manipulation focused, you can pick a clan that's like the Ventru. So they're all kind of good, and they all have stereotypes associated with
Absolutely.
them, like in-game stereotypes,
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
oh, you're this clan. Well, I don't trust you because this clan is associated with that group, and we don't like that group.
And you can always be individual with the clan. It just gives you kind of a base of almost like
Yeah,
the struggle
yeah,
that you want to deal with. Like,
exactly. Yeah, you can for the clan that or the sorry the side that is very much we don't break the masquerade. We have the most political control. They are that's the Camarilla.
Mhm,
They don't like when kindred are made without permission.
mhm,
So if you were made without permission, um, you have the chance of you kind of need to prove yourself after you meet like kind of like it's the prince of the Camarilla. And if
mhm.
you can plead your case on why you should still live,
Oh,
um, yeah, it's really intense because they don't want just a bunch of kindred running around.
mhm,
You are encouraged. There's sort of like laws that's the very like hoity-toity. We are in control. We do this to survive, right?
mhm,
You have things expected of you, and there are traditions, and you must follow these traditions. Whereas the other side of the coin, the anarchs are you don't need to introduce yourself. It's polite, but you don't
mhm.
have to. We're not going to make you like those stuck up people. You can just, you don't have to get permission. Um there's pretty much two sides of the same coin, to be honest, because while it's very much like you don't have to, it is still very strongly encouraged.
Of course, of course.
But you can be somebody from a clan that maybe was an outcast, and
Mhm,
you're trying to be a representative of not just yourself, but like other people in your clan who maybe want to be part of the fancy society. They want the protection that comes with that. So you are sort of the lone outcast. You can still have those kinds of stories. My character, she's a Toreador, but she doesn't really act like a Toreador. It's just how it happened to go.
mhm.
And that if she were to have picked a clan, it definitely wouldn't have been that one. But it's just kind of she's very pretty, and the person who turned her wanted her for her beauty because she was going to be an art piece. And
Mhm.
that's kind of like
Ooh,
how that clan works. And it's kind of sad, or it's you can just be turned because of your beauty or because of your talent, and you're kind of like the weird fad fixation of your sire. And then okay, well, we're not really into oil painting anymore, so I don't really care about you. I'm going to go into this new age, weird digital art. I'm going to find a digital artist. And so now you're kind of just left behind. There are
damn. So I
things
guess
that
actually
happen.
that kind of answers the question that I had of how do the clans get picked? Is that decided by how you are turned?
Um, yeah, certain clans have like weird, like, what's the best word for that? Tendencies, I guess.
Mhm.
One of my favorite clans is called the La Sombra, and they're very much a misunderstood darkness. And if you want an edge lord, you can pick a La Sombra. They're also kind of they're in a group of maybe two or three clans that's associated with a really bad cult.
Mhm.
Um, that is sort of like if you got your two sides of this turf war, this is that cult is what will band them together to fight against, kind of thing.
Ooh.
But their initiation process can be pretty brutal because they will put you. One of the things that they can do, and again, hashtag not all sires, um, they can put you while you're still human through an arduous amount of trials because they're the underdog clan. They're the clan that is, you will claw your way to the top. If the fancy Camarilla side has the Ventru as their kings and their queens of their political power and the politicians, the La Sombra are the anarchs version of that. And they are ruthless and they will claw their way to the top and they're super ambitious. But can you survive? So maybe they will put you as a human through some really tough trials and see if you survive. And if you survive, then you're worthy.
Damn.
Sort of throw you to the dogs, and then maybe they will turn you and they will, again, they won't maybe be there for you to teach you stuff. They're going to watch you from the shadows and see if you can make it.
That's
it's rough.
That's so cool, though. Again, that's what this game does. It is the personal struggles. It's those personal stories. It gets extremely personal and dark.
It can be really petty too, because there's this weird little war between clans of like I mentioned, the Ventru and the La Sombra. They're kind of the same, except the La Sombra are more tooth and nail, I'm gonna claw my way to the top, where the Ventru are kind of just bored at the top, right? So maybe a La Sombra gets word that a Ventru is looking at this particular human as a candidate for them. They might just go and snipe them to be petty. Yeah, so that could be a part of your backstory, is you were supposed to be a Ventru. You have those qualities, but a La Sombra got to you first because they just wanted them to not have you.
Oh man, that's crazy. That is so crazy. So, so does what clan you are, is that more so determined by if you are turned by a member of that clan, or is it by personality and traits that you have?
Traditionally, it's traits that you have. You have to traditionally get permission to turn somebody, to embrace somebody. It's all very romantic, right? It's I'm going to embrace this person. So in order to get permission, you have to ask the prince. If you're part of the Camarilla, that's why I'm kind of going, that's the sort of default. I'm looking at this person. I would like to embrace this person into my clan. And they're like, okay, well, you don't want to have a serial killer as a kindred. That's going to be really bad for your masquerade, right? Because they're just going to go get people left and right. And you're going to get caught. And one of the reasons why you don't want to get caught is because there are hunters. And we're kind of where the game is set right now. It's like the Second Inquisition. You got to be careful because there are hunters who are hunting you, who have been trained for this. So if you go willy-nilly embracing people left and right, that's going to be obvious and that's going to draw trouble. And you might get got after, 500 years of being alive. Maybe now you're going to get got. So be careful. So they want to make sure that who they are bringing into the fold is worthy. Because it's a gift, right? It's very egotistical. It's a gift. Or maybe it's a punishment. It's a curse. Maybe they want to teach this, the Nosferatu clan, maybe they're very much not the stars of they're in the limelight. They're the ones who do the tech stuff, and maybe they look for people who need to be taught a lesson in humility. So maybe they find a celebrity that's very egotistical, they're very rude to people, and they want to humble them. So they're going to turn them into something that physically is just too much for them to take. And so they'll look for things like that. Or they'll look for people who are to me, that's the really intelligent class. It's the class that's really smart. And that's what I mean by you got stereotypes. Every clan has vibes that they're looking for, personalities. Or like I mentioned before, it could just be a petty, I just wanted this person to not have it. Or it's a crime of passion. Those do happen as well.
Hmm. That's just so intricate. Like
Yeah.
that's the best word that I can think of is intricate. It's there again, there's just a lot there, and I don't it's definitely a game, personal struggle and that political aspect. If you don't want to like handle the political aspect, I'm sure that you could do Vampire the Masquerade like that. However, I think you might be doing it a disservice.
I think so too. There's so many things baked into it that really lend itself to those kinds of games.
Hmm. But I think this is a great kind of segue for Vampire the Masquerade, and we kind of mentioned this before. How important is the lore from the official books like how important is that to have if you are going to run a game?
I don't think it's super important, only because in the books it will mention that it's not super needed. It is a place for you. They don't really have like modules like how like 5e and stuff have like modules, right? I think there's a couple of books that have, I guess, maybe kind of the vibe, but it's like of 10 books, maybe like 2 or 3 are like that. Other ones are just it's all lore, and this one has maybe 2 new clans in it or something. These ones have some more backgrounds. These have more merits and flaws, things for your characters, but not really a story to follow. Um, I think like a there's like I said, maybe like 2 or 3 do have things like that for you to kind of roughly follow. They have like scenes that you can do, but primarily it's all lore, which is why even though I've been enmeshed in this for a few years now, there's still so much I don't know. There's still things I'm learning all the time, and I can fall into holes and never come out for like a weekend. Um,
Just
and
so
it is,
immersed in the lore.
yeah, it's one of the things that I genuinely really enjoy about it, and I find it to be incredibly inspiring.
Mhm.
Um, but you don't really need that. If you want a skeletal structure of you have your Camarilla and you have your Anarchs, and it's a turf war, and the Camarilla include these clans, and the Anarchs have these ones, and then you just from there you're like, okay, and then the Camarilla have their prince, and the Anarchs have their baron. It's basically their version of the prince. Like I said, there's not a huge difference. It's kind of it's something that like characters can hang a lantern on.
Mhm.
It's 2 sides of the same coin. They basically want the same. They want the same things. Just one is a bit more edgy and has. There's not a huge difference. um, but you can just take that skeletal structure. If you don't want that, and you're like, I just want this world. I just want to play in this world, but I want to be able to use like the powers, and I want the clans, and everything that's associated with those clans. You can do that too. You don't have to use any of it. It's primarily like a homebrew game in general. So you get to pick and choose what you want. As long as everybody's having fun, that's pretty much like the core of the game is have fun, use all of this, use none of it, use bits and pieces. It's all for you.
Pick and choose.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, that's amazing. So, just as I know that you haven't had the storyteller experience yet, but as a player, how easy do you think it is to incorporate like your own custom clans and things like that?
Like if you were to like homebrew clan,
Yeah.
I've never tried that. I don't think it would be too difficult.
Hmm.
Um, there are quite a few already, so there might be one that does kind of fit the bill already. However, I don't think it would be too difficult, to be honest. I mean, there's a lot of things that kind of are part of it. It's not just like, oh, at level 20 you get this, because there's not levels in this game. you get experience points, and those you get to use to buy things.
Mm-hmm.
You can buy better traits, and there's like a formula for how much that costs. You can buy, if you or are only kind of part of these disciplines, you can maybe learn something outside of your discipline section, like your schools that you get to learn. So as long as you're able to kind of include that so it's not weaker than the ones that already exist, it would take some work, but I don't think it would be something out of the ordinary. It's probably exists already. I just haven't really looked at it.
That sounds about right. I was just curious, especially since I haven't played the game yet. I'm like, how easy would it be to kind of do
I'm
your own
sure
thing?
that like, I mean, people like to like add things to games all the time. Like, I don't think it's something that would be frowned upon. I just haven't really thought about it, but now I kind of want to try my hand at it, to be honest. See
That would
what
be
I
really
can
cool.
come up with. Yeah, I think it'd be kind of fun, honestly. I mean, this game is very embracing creativity, so
Hmm.
as long as you incorporate stuff that make your new clan something that can rival another one that exists, yeah.
Yeah, make it interesting.
Yeah.
Really. Absolutely perfect. Actually, I do want to. So you mentioned disciplines, and I think that's come up a few times. Uh, so when I was reading through a little bit of the book yesterday, when you pick your clans, there's a few different things that seem to come along with it. There's archetypes, there's banes, and there's disciplines. I'm not sure if they're like traits or abilities, but are these like specific to each of these clans?
Yeah. Yeah. So like let me see if I can like think of like the main one for like the one that I really enjoy playing.
Mhm.
So I'm just gonna use Toreador as an example because that's my vibe. That's my if I were to be in a clan, I would pick a Toreador. Yeah, they're the bards. Like, let's be real here. Um, so every clan comes with a bane, and that bane is specific to that clan. So for the Toreador, your bane is if you find yourself in a situation that is less than beautiful, and that could be whatever beauty means to you, right? If you find yourself to be in a situation that is less than beautiful, your bane might activate, and um, that would be like I think the best one to explain it would be, let's see, okay, so you lose your you basically get a penalty, and it's sort of it'll go to whatever clan that you're part of. So if you're part of Toreador and you find yourself in this specific scenario, your bane will activate, and that is a penalty to your dice pool. And then, man, I'm hoping I get that right because like I haven't really dealt with banes too much, but I have dealt with compulsions a lot.
Mhm.
Compulsions, I think, are one of my favorite things, and again, that is definitely associated with your clan. Whatever clan you pick, you get a different bane and a different compulsion. Um, and the compulsion for Toreadors is you can be so enraptured into something that you find incredibly beautiful or moving. Maybe it's um, a for my if I guess in a weird sort of way, like my character, she is really into guns and stuff. So if she sees somebody who's just using like sees like a John Wick, right? They're like going off, and their form is excellent, or maybe this gun is just absolutely beautifully made. You're stunned. You can't do anything. You are stuck. If you are a Toreador that is really into beautiful people traditionally, or beautiful things, your party's trying to run away, and you see something that is a person or a piece of art that is just so moving, you'll stop and you're going to stare, and you will stay there until the sun comes up and kills you. Like, that is a possibility.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it is something that it's baked into each clan what that's going to be.
That's
And
insanely
depending on
cool.
what it is, can be the severity of it. And your friends, they can help shake you out of it and stuff, but
Mhm.
like they do come up.
And that's like a perfect element for like storytellers to use. Like knowing each of the compulsions
Yes.
and stuff
Yeah.
like that and integrating that into the story to just make it oh my God, yes. Yes, just just yes in general.
Hmm.
Oh, that is amazing.
Yeah. And it could be something as simple as like, wow, we were running away and I find myself in a sewer. This place is disgusting. Your Bane activates. Now
Mhm.
you have uh penalties to certain things now.
Mhm.
Or if you're a different a clan that likes to collect things. Um it's you will not in this scene, your sole focus is to obtain that jacket.
Mhm.
You will do anything that you do in this scene that is not in service to obtaining that jacket will be at a penalty.
Oh, that's so
That's, I guess,
cool.
like I think that's the best way that I can explain like a bane. And
Uh-huh.
I think that one is for the Simitsi. It's a lot
Mhm.
of them, man. Um, but like,
There's
yeah,
13,
so like,
that is a lot.
yeah, yeah, your storyteller will tell you this is your. They will know what your bane is, and they will be like,
Mhm.
this is your. You got to be steel failure. This triggers, or you end up in this situation. This triggers, and this is what you need to do. And it kind of
That's just
prevents a bit of metagaming, to be honest, because it's like
Mhm.
you need to get X or you need to do this. Anything that you do that doesn't serve that purpose, you will get a penalty on your dice pool. So instead of maybe rolling 5, you're going to roll like 3 or something.
Yeah, and it still lets you be able to do those other actions. It's
Yeah.
just at a disadvantage, which gives still the freedom that you are allowed to still do things.
Yes,
It's
you
just
are. You are. And that kind of goes into the role play aspect of it. You just
Mhm.
might, not do as well.
You're
And it's
distracted
always
by
been a
that
more interesting
jacket.
because maybe the people that you're around don't know what clan you are. Like that's the thing that you can hide unless you have a physical tell like a Nosferatu. Maybe they don't know what you are. So you get to hide your powers, you get to hide your weaknesses.
Crazy. I love that. Oh, I love that. Um, so with the banes and compulsions kind of covered, what are the disciplines?
So I think I mentioned this earlier. Disciplines I would equate to sort of like schools of magic.
Mhm.
Um, every clan has access to certain ones. You can branch out later through a couple different ways to do that. But there are, I can't remember how many exactly that there are, but there's like obfuscate, which is very much the subtle one.
Mhm.
Um, those are things where if you want to be invisible or if you want to like have people's gaze kind of just drift off of you, you can have powers associated with that. Each discipline has different, like, they're not spells, but like if you want to kind of call them like, these are abilities that are unique to this school. So you have um if you want to, like I said, if you want to do like an invisible thing or if you want to do something that is, so there is a discipline that I really like. It's called celerity. So that is like your, I guess, like super dex focused one.
Mhm.
There you want to be super fast, if you want to be graceful, if you want to do really cool acrobatic stuff. Celerity is your jam. In there, you have things that are like they're level based, which is kind of why I equated it to like a school of magic because you can't just start at a level 4 ability or something.
Mhm.
Your levels will be associated with the dots that you have in those disciplines. So if you only have 1 dot in celerity, because you picked that when you started, you get to choose a level 1 celerity ability. And that could be, I think there's 2 different ones. There's Cat's Grace, which pretty much allows you to have really good balance, really good. You can. It's your super dexy thing. You walk on wires and stuff. You can that kind of a grace. Rapid reflexes is something I gave to my character because she does a lot of gun stuff. You can pretty much reload, switch things really fast. You've really rapid. I mean, it's kind of baked in the name, right? Rapid reflexes.
Yeah.
Some of these abilities are free. The 2 that I mentioned are free, but there are some abilities that will cost you, like you have to roll a hunger die to do it. It's not like a sex like a save or suck kind of thing. It will happen, but do you get hungrier when you do it?
Ooh, okay, that's
So
interesting.
you always will be able to use it. You can use them, as far as I'm aware, as many times as you want, but I mean, you're rolling your hunger die to do this thing. Be careful. I have done things where I have gotten to level 4 hunger because I was just very loose with both of my party members were indisposed. So I had to kind of do a thing by myself, and she's very relentless. And will just kind of do dumb shit. She's not the smart one.
But it makes it so interesting that you can do that.
Yeah. And it, like I said, like, so those things, it's like it usually lasts for a scene. Like the duration will be a scene. So you don't need to constantly spam it for this one scene. And maybe the scene is the whole game. Maybe it's just the one. You're in a chamber and you're talking with somebody, or you're interrogating somebody, and that's half the game. That's still one scene. It doesn't matter how long it goes. It's the scene. If the scene is 5 minutes, then that's 5 minutes. You know, that's just kind of depending on how long you stretch it out. How long you
That's
need
so
it for.
cool. And so, like, for each of the clans, do they only get one of these, like, types of disciplines, or do they get, like, several to choose from?
You get a couple to choose from. Yeah. I think I had access to, I don't want to like get this wrong. There's God, there's so many, but like yeah, it's usually like maybe 2 or 3 that you have access to, and then you can pick from those 3, 2 of them. And then you can kind of dump your points into those.
That
And
gives
some of them
nice
are really helpful. They'll like there's awe, which when you activate it, you are the most enthralling person in this room. Everybody wants to know you. Everybody wants to be you, and that is something that is part of like that very political clan, the Ventures. They're very good at those.
that's
And on
so
a human,
cool.
it just works. On a vampire, they might be able to see through that, especially depending if they're like old. So it's also kind of hard to suss out who's a vampire and who's not. Right? Like I've come across a couple of scenarios where it's like, how do I figure out if this person that I'm talking to in this big frat party, I need to find a kindred. Is anybody going to know that I'm in here? How do I suss out the one person who is in here that I need to talk to, that I need to avoid? Yeah, it's hard. But you have some abilities that might help you. Like one helps you have like super heightened senses. You can hear things that maybe other people can't.
Just the possibilities that I'm already.
There's so many possibilities. It's crazy. It's why it's like I'm like there's so many that I don't know. And then the higher level you are, the more crazy stuff you can do. But those cost points. So the more you kind of like level up, the more it's like usually it's like kind of like milestone based from my experience. It's like, okay, you finished this chapter, you get X experience points.
I was just about to ask, like, how do you get XP in the game? So, that's interesting though. Is like through
it can be different depending on your storyteller, right? It may be every every game, every session, but I think it's traditionally like it's kind of, you have a storyteller, so it's like kind of chapter chronicle based.
Hmm. I love the I love the element, not the element, but the way that they use like the phrasing of scenes and chapters and
Yeah, it's
and
cute.
all of
Really
that.
cute. It's
It's
all
especially,
very romantic to me.
yeah.
Meaning like we're gonna embrace you. The kiss is them is the bite.
Hmm.
So they call it a kiss. It's like, oh my gosh, you guys. It's so dramatic.
It sets the tone
It does.
right off
Yeah.
the bat. Right off the bat. And I mean the book does as well. Like the Vampire Masquerade book is gorgeous, especially the cover. It's
Oh my gosh. The art just I love how the books are set up so much. Like it's so aesthetic.
Mhm.
Like the first I want to say almost like 10 pages is just it helps you get into the lore because it's just like a collection of letters. It's a collection of um transcribed phone calls, um,
Mhm.
things like that. It's actual pieces of like evidence from police reports or messages from one kindred to another, to from the sire to the child, and it really gives you a vibe. You don't have to read it. I think it's all very interesting. So I've spent a lot of time just reading that.
If anything, it just sets the vibe. It just like
It does.
immediately just hits you in the face with the tone. This
Mhm.
is
A
what we're
lot of
going for.
Yeah, it's like there's like photography inside of it. It's all very like very well graphic designed. It's got a very certain aesthetic.
Absolutely. I'm trying to think, are there any important other like mechanics or character aspects that hasn't come up yet that you think, oops, sorry, should be touched upon?
I think we talked about disciplines. I guess like I mean you do have your two sides, right, of your turf war is kind of like how it goes. You have the Camarilla and the Anarchs. And then they're like unified enemy, which is the Sabbat. And that is it's like a vampire death cult. And if that doesn't give you a vibe, I don't know what will. They're very much we don't support hiding. We don't support being the ones who are suppressed. We were given these gifts. We should rule. And any city that is part of their territory is just withered, and they will just drain everything and leave it just husks. There's no preserving people. It is just misery and death. And it's very, very sad, which is why these two sides that are always at war will come together to go against them. Um,
Cool.
yeah, and it's really cool. And like all of the clans have their one originator. And like the lore goes back to there's even like there's a book inside of the game called the Book of Nod, and that is like the story of how everything came to be. And you can actually just buy that book in real life. I have it. It's great. Um, and it talks about the original vampire was Cain.
Mhm.
Yeah, very big Adam and Eve vibes. Religion is kind of a focal point in this game as well. It's another thing that like if you're uncomfortable with, you don't have to include, but there's a lot of like tones of religion involved in this game. Um, so yeah. I
Mhm.
wish I could like go on and on. I could go on and on and on, but like I said, there's still some things that like I just don't know. There's some mechanics that I'm not the best at.
Mhm.
Um, but if you're looking for a game that is complex, that has a lot of depth, a lot of heart, and a lot of gothic vibes, this is definitely something that I would highly recommend, especially if you enjoy roleplay, because it is a very heavy roleplay game. There is combat, but like the combat in the book, it talks about like it shouldn't last more than like 4 turns. It's not a combat focused game. There are things that you can do. Like I mean, like my character has guns. There are other clans that can turn their fingers into claws that you can fight with. There are points where you're going to need to fight, but it shouldn't last the whole game. It's not like a D&D thing where it is a monster fighting kind of game, right? This is you are the monster. There isn't really a huge combat scenario. If you want to skip the combat, there's even a thing in there that will let you do that. If you go into a scenario where you're fighting a cult of like a cult, maybe it's just a human cult with like a vampire at the center, and you get the vampire, you're gonna get the humans. Like we all know how this goes. We don't need to spend 30 minutes going through each turn talking about how you're gonna get these humans. We know how this goes. So at that point, the storyteller can say like, okay, well, we know that you guys took down this person. We know that you're going to clean up. So why don't you guys tell me how you did that? So everybody still has that moment of spotlight to explain how they finished up the room or what they did or maybe how they felt. Did they do anything? What did you do?
Ooh, and that just makes it, again, more intimate. Like
it is, yeah.
Because I think that's a flaw in D&D is if you're thinking of it it's so easy to just gamify everything that you're not really thinking of the people or the actions or anything behind it all the time. But if you have to then tell the storyteller, how did you participate in this? What did you do? How did you feel? That just changes the entire game there. That changes because that's what you're thinking. The entire time this is getting set up, that is the thoughts that are going through your head. It's not how much damage can I do to this guy to make sure that we can, get out of this in less time or whatever. It's how does my character feel? Do I participate? Is this something my character would do? And then it calls your own like morals and your own like touchstones and stuff into question.
And there's like actual adjudicated, like there's set rules on how combat will go in the game, but it is so like it almost feels like a footnote in the grand scheme of things because it's kind of like what it is, right? It's not about doing all of that. It's about you, and then maybe one of the things that you focus a lot on is how do you go and feed? Walk me through like how you're going to get your meal tonight. You wake up and you're hungry. Do you go and do you feed? And then even more than that, how much do you take? Do you want the voice in your head to stop? Do you want that constant feeling of hunger to go away? And then you take this person's life. And then you've got to deal with the repercussions of that because that is also, depending on what turf you're on, not allowed.
Ooh, this is so good.
Yeah. Is there a detective on your tail? Is there a hunter you don't know about? Is there a spy in your coterie? Is there a neighborhood watch person who saw this happen? Like, you got to be careful.
Absolutely. Oh, this gets so, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So many ideas, so many things. I want to play now. I mean, again, anytime that I talk about a game, it's always I want to play it. This is no different.
It's so near and dear to my heart. Like there are so many things that you can do with this game. Like I guess like the last like thing is like it can be so personal and you make it up, right? Like my character is from like a mafia type of family and she's very proud of the scars that she has. You don't get any more scars when you're dead, really. Not by gun. You're going to heal. You don't get those badges of honor. So does it really count? What do you have to look at to feel like you did something that was this monumental thing that you did? What do you have to prove that you did it? You know? And
Oh,
it's sort of like it's something that she is not really happy about. Like, I did this really cool thing. I sacrificed myself for this person, and I'm pristine. I'm perfect. And
oh
I don't want
gosh.
to be perfect. There's a clan that can like basically do like flesh sculpting. That's your clan that makes the monsters. They're part of that really bad cult, the Vampire Death Cult. They make if you want monsters to fight, that's the clan that makes the monsters. They can take, it's called flesh crafting. They can make people into the like abominations. And we're talking like steel plated armor embedded in flesh and these just creepy nightmarish things. They can make it. Or they can give you the scar that you want, or they can take away the scar that they want. They can't fix a Nosferatu. It'll like fix for a second and they might look really pretty, but then it just reverts. It's their curse. It's like their clan curse.
Is that also a thing within the game, is curses?
Kind of. I mean, it's not like something. I think the Nosferatu have it the worst.
Hmm.
But it's very much like an affliction. Like
Hmm.
it kind of goes into your 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 bane kind of thing. It's like for the Toreadors, like you're obsessive with Malkavians. That's like a clan that is, I think, one of the most popular clans. They're the broken ones. They're the ones that hear voices. They're unique. It's also the hardest class, I would say, to play well. I mean, it's you don't want to be stereotypical with mental disorders and stuff. You don't want to. It's kind of hard to me. It's you got to be very respectful when you play that clan because they are associated with those kinds of like you can have a dissociative personality disorder or you have um it's the clan their symbol is like a broken mirror. They're very misunderstood, and I think a lot of the time if played well and played right they can be the most beautiful clan because they have a lot of complexities and they have a lot of like I think you usually pick a thing that is like your affliction. And it doesn't have to be a mental disorder. It can just be a habit that
Hmm.
is really kind of weird that maybe people look at to be different. You
Hmm.
know, they're the clan that gets a bad rap by even their own, like, not their own clan, but like their own, uh, if you're part of this side of the war, like they look down upon you.
Hmm.
They think they underestimate you and they think that you're weird, but they don't get it. And maybe you talk in riddles, you know. It's just it's interesting. If you don't like going
Very.
outside, maybe you've got a touch of agoraphobia. You don't
Uh-huh.
like you can be very paranoid, you know.
Absolutely. Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah, it definitely seems like this game has a lot of with the clans. It feels like can be tricky.
Yeah. It's good to do your research and I mean at the end of the day, have fun, make sure nobody's hurt. Um and if you want to do a clan that is really delves into those darker themes even more, make sure that everybody's chill with it and what you want to
Absolutely.
do. And always just try to be respectful in whatever you do, right?
Hmm.
You don't know the struggles that the people you're playing with are going through.
Exactly. But yeah, I think we are starting to get to the end here. I got a few final questions. The
Okay.
first one is When we were talking earlier, you said that you would love to become a storyteller in this game. What about this game is drawing you to becoming a storyteller? Like, you haven't taken up that role in games that you've played before. What about this game is drawing you in?
I think so. Like I also, in my spare time, I'm a writer. I've written a couple of plays, and I've written a couple of
So cool.
books. I got my start when I was really young in like fan fiction, stuff like that, right? So I love writing stories. And I think the fact that it's kind of like, oh, it's a storyteller and you do chapters and scenes and things like that. That's a big draw, but I think for the most part, like I think I finally found the game that hits all of the marks for me in terms of the story that I would want to tell.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I were to do something with 5e, I need to I need to be good not just at telling a story, but I need to be good at building encounters and dealing with stat blocks and balancing stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a lot for me personally. Even though I've been playing that game for a really long time, I am not I'm not confident enough to do that yet, or like I don't it's not something that I am looking forward to doing. That's not the kind of thing that I'm really interested in. I really like the story. So I get to mostly focus on story and I get to tell something that is personal because I really love I also like do like a lot of like online like role playing. Like I even did like a Vampire Masquerade like role play group where there's like a big server where you get to like role play with people. And then I just also just have friends that I will just like, oh cool, we're making a character and then we're not playing a game right now. We're just sort of doing it through text, you know? And I guess this is your scenario. And I've basically, I feel like I have been a storyteller because I've made a little world that my friends can play in if they want to play in. And I will play all the NPCs and it's a great time.
Oh,
Um,
that's so cool.
there is even like it's called like a thirst bot and it will roll your dice for you. It's really cute. So like, we'll do that and like, oh, okay, well, you failed this thing. So this is what happens. It's a lot of fun. Um, but I get to make characters and I get to have my friends play in a world that I create. And this is the kind of story that I would want to tell. I like the personal aspect of it. And I want to dig into the characters' insecurities and their worries. And I want to see if I can, what I can get them to do. I want to see them overcome stuff. I want to see growth. Can you grow as a kindred? You know?
Yes,
Or are you stuck?
absolutely.
Like there's just, it's so fascinating.
Hmm. I completely get it. I think that's such an important thing. If you are wanting to like run a game, you need to be fascinated with the idea of your characters growing and your players growing while playing and what aspects they will bring to the table and all of that. And just everything you are saying is just absolutely getting me in my heart. It's so good.
It's full of inspiration for me and it's the vibe that I click with the most.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's why I want to do storytelling. I think I can do it. I mean I don't know everything.
Mhm.
There's some things that I may have said in this that are wrong, that if somebody who's been doing this, you know, since forever, will pick out. But you know, I'm doing my best and I think that there's always room to grow. There's always going to be things to learn, but this is a
Absolutely.
game that I feel driven to do that with.
I'm so glad that you found that. That's again so amazing to me. Just it's such a it's such an amazing moment when you find a game that just clicks so thoroughly in your head. It's like this is what I want to do for the rest of my life is play Vampire the
Oh
Masquerade.
yeah, like I am obsessed with just the lore and everything that's involved in it. And like there's a this stream, New York by Night. There was like an LA by Night. It's kind of like the VTM equivalent of like Critical Role, right? Um, they are a very good introduction into kind of what you might expect a game to look like. So if you're interested in kind of wanting a visual representation, New York by Night is probably a really, really great starting off point, because it's not made for new players, but my friends who are new players, they got some things explained. It's like kind of like a happy accident, because maybe somebody in the game is trying to ask a question. Some of these people have played for a long time, but they still have questions, you know? And Jason, the storyteller, he's been really great at, helping. He's a really good example of a really wonderful storyteller. So that is definitely, I'm not even in it and I'm just shilling it. Like, you should watch the show. It's really good. I love it so much.
Absolutely. I mean, 100% any, what was the name of it again?
New York by Night.
New
It's
York by
usually
Night.
like it's place, all these games, the VTM games take place in the real world kind of thing.
Mhm.
And it's usually the city that you're playing in, or like the state or something, whatever you want to do, and it's by night, right? So you
I
have
love
like
it.
LA by night, Cincinnati by night, things like that.
I love it so much. Absolutely. So go check that out. Because it's like, this is great to just like talk about it and get people interested in games, but to actually like fully understand how it's played out, playing it yourself or seeing actual plays, 100% the best way to do it.
Yeah,
But
and it's
yeah,
full of seasoned voice actors. They have
of
guests and
course.
stuff. It's a good time. It's a good time. Really great. And
Amazing.
they only like 8 episodes per season too, and they've only done like 2 seasons, so you don't have a lot to catch up on. And they're like 2-hour episodes.
Oh, that's great. That's
It's
fantastic.
easy and manageable. Yeah.
But yeah, so I think I'm on my last question, and that's, is there anything else any final thoughts before we end the episode?
I don't know if I talk so much. I kind of ramble, so I think I've said everything that I like. I want more people to play the game. Please give it a shot. I guess that's my final thought is I would love for there to be more people who play this game. Um there's a player guide that's just come out. I'm gonna, after this, go hit up my local game store to see if they have it. I think that'll probably be a better. My only issue when I was getting started was learning how to play the game, and it was just kind of overwhelming. And you
Mhm.
had to parse through what was for the storyteller and what was for the player, and that was like the hardest thing. So the fact that they have a player guide, I'm very excited about. And but yeah, I would really really like more people to give this game a shot. I would love to see it out there more. Um, Especially like we're kind of into our darker vibe right now, I think, for media. So I think it would be really cool to see this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I want to play with more people. People should play the game. It's beautiful and it's great and it's gothic and it has vampires. So you can't go wrong. There's also werewolves and stuff. There's so many other things that I didn't talk about that like you could check it
So
out.
much potential. Yes. Yes.
There's also a
Check it
video
out.
game. There's a video game.
Okay,
It's called
yeah, yeah, yeah. I've seen that.
Bloodline. Yeah, and they're finally coming out with another one. It has been in like production hell for years. I want to say 10 years. It's probably an exaggeration, but like the graphics of the first one are like PlayStation 1 graphics, okay? Like it's really good. Like that game is super good and it's a kind of a great example. You do get to build a character sheet and stuff. It's really fun. They're having a second one and I'm super stoked. But yeah,
Oh, that's so
play
exciting.
it, play things, enmesh the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Check it out. See if you like it.
Yeah.
See if anything clicks, because it's a fantastic game. It's an amazing game. I already wanted to play it before, just in general, because I want to play every game that's on my shelf. But
I have so many games that I haven't played that are on my shelf. I feel this.
yeah, I don't. I choose to ignore that fact most times.
Yeah.
But yeah, this has been fantastic. Again, I already want to play it so bad now that I've talked to Kat about it and know even more things. But yes, thank you so much for coming on and talking with me. This was amazing. I'm so glad we were finally able to do this.
Me too. I love talking about this game. I'm super passionate about it and to the point where I needed to make dice for it because I didn't really see any dice for it. And it's really hard to make dice for this game because it's 20 dice. So it's like 3 sets of dice. It's a lot of work, but like, man, I love it and I just want it. And if I could make these dice forever, I would do it.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, 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 yes. But again, thank you. And just thank you for anyone who is listening to this episode. And yeah, that is
Yeah.
who.
Thank you
Thank you,
for
everyone who
listening.
listened to this episode. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad that people would be interested in wanting to know. So thank you so much for having me on and um, asking me questions about it because it's kind of like an honor to. I told my friend who taught me how to play that I was going to be doing this, and he's very excited for me.
Oh, that's so awesome. Yes, yes, yes. I love it. But yes, thank you. And I think that is the end of this episode. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the RPG Goblin. I really, really appreciate it. If you haven't yet, I would really appreciate if you followed the RPG Goblin on your favorite podcast platform and please give us a review. Any little bit of support means the world to me and will help keep this podcast going. Thank you again to Kat for coming on and joining. If you haven't followed her yet, her dice making account is Copper Dice. The full name will be in the description below, but it's Copper spelled Khopper. It was such an honor to talk about Vampire the Masquerade. I really hope that if you love the game that you go and check it out. So, the next episode of the RPG Goblin will be coming out Friday, April 28th. We will be talking about Call of Cthulhu with a special guest, Arcane Keeper. And oh, I'm so excited to share this episode with you guys. So, make sure you keep an eye out for the next episode, and I'll see you next week.